Hey Pathfinders, our book has finally arrived. The Pathfinder's Journey is live on Amazon right now and ready for you. If you have already purchased our book and or left us a review, we thank you endlessly. If you haven't, what are you waiting for? The ebook sale of 99 cents won't last long, so head over to Amazon today to get your copy. Be sure to download the free 7-day reading journal to make your journey even more worthwhile. Well, that's all for now. Check out the link in the show notes to get your copy of The Pathfinder's Journey today. Enjoy the show.
The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers the fear.
Welcome to the On Purpose Investor Podcast with your host, Eric and Tiffany Vogel. We spent several hard years building a rental property portfolio so we could have more time with our family and live our ideal life. Finding your path can be difficult, so we're here to help guide you along the way with lessons, tips, and tricks to design and implement your dream life through real estate investing. Now sit back, turn up the volume, and get ready for this episode of the On Purpose Investor. Hey Pathfinders, and welcome back to the On Purpose Investor Podcast with your host, Eric.
And Tiffany.
Great to have you back this week as we're talking about overcoming fear. What we're going to talk about fear is how to create systems in your life to navigate the fear cycle and to better overcome them without having to face them head on, but creating strategies and techniques to work through them and to make them a little less scary. So what is fear? Fear often comes from a lack of clarity and from unknowns in life, like mice in our house.
I know. Let's not go there.
So I asked Tiffany over the course of this past week, think about what your fear is. What are you afraid of most?
Yeah, for me right now, what's pressing in our life is we have a rat situation in our yard. We live close to a downtown area, and we had a tornado that hit almost a year ago now. And when that happened, the rats migrated to our part of town because
they were displaced.
Yes, the poor rats. So they've now taken home in our shed and our crawl space. And while Eric was gone for an extended military training, I was fortunate to stumble upon 2 dead rats in the backyard that the dogs had gotten. So we had to get traps and everything put out. So not a fun experience. But then recently I noticed, while of course Eric again was gone for military duty, that there were these little black things by the back door. And it took me a minute and I realized, oh my gosh, it's rat poop. The rats are coming in the doggy door and getting the dog food and water sitting by the back door. And they're coming in our house. They're going into the kitchen. They're probably going to climb into our bed. Like, I was freaking out.
Now, these didn't actually turn out to be rat droppings, did they?
No, they were little bugs, which in Georgia is just par for the course. Not a big deal. But I thought for sure it was rats, and the rats were coming in and climbing on my face while I was sleeping, or I don't know. It just gave me the heebie-jeebies.
Well, I'm just surprised the rats didn't want to cozy up in my $100 hot tub in the backyard.
Well, one did get in the hot tub and died.
Got in the insulation.
Yeah.
He didn't realize
it smelled.
That it was so super cozy to just get in and turn the jets on. But so long as it's not hyperchlorinated and it burns your nose.
Them. Yeah.
But this is something that we all face. And often, if we fear something, we avoid it. I am Enneagram type 9, where I am a referee, people pleaser. And the one thing that I believe, especially from my personal experience, that Enneagram 9s fear the most is rejection. We want to be accepted. We want to be welcomed. And my biggest fear is rejection. When we started putting together our website and assembling this podcast and saying, we're going to talk about things that we know about, that we enjoy, that we want to share with other people, I had a lot of hesitation because it's like, they're going to hear it and I'm not going to know what they're thinking. And so I'm just going to assume the worst and just believe that they hate it. But I got to overcome that. I've got to realize that it's going to land on their ears and make an impact one way or another, either positive or negative. And if it helps them positively, that's wonderful. That's great. But if it affects them negatively, I would hope that they'd reach out so that I might be able to clarify things in certain ways. But I had to overcome that fear of rejection and just do it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people in social media in particular can put out a lot of hate mail. Like, they've got something going on internally and they lash out with negative comments. I know when we release the book, we're going to get negative comments, and we have already talked about what we expect some of those comments to be like. But at the end of the day, if we can help one person, it's all worth it.
Right. Reminds me of the Bible verse. They talk about the 99 sheep were good, but there was one that had went astray.
Yeah.
It was not a situation where Jesus was going to leave that one sheep unattended.
Right.
He was going to chase after that one, because that's what matters the most, is that everyone is reached.
Yeah.
And that's our goal. Maybe these podcasts land on your ears and it's just empty listening, but perhaps there's someone listening to where they hear what we say and their life is changed by something we say.
Right.
And that is our goal. And we're going to keep doing this so that we can reach as many people as possible. Just because I fear rejection doesn't mean I'm not going to drive forward and give it my all.
Right. With our business too, the real estate business, there were a lot of times it was terrifying. We'd wake up and be like, we have no money. Like, how are we going to pay for this bill coming up? It always seemed like we either had money for like a minute to pay off all the debt that we had accumulated, or we were like in dire straits once again. And it was feast or famine, pretty hardcore for 4 years.
Very tall waves and very shallow troughs.
Yes.
I mean, the ebb and flow of investing in real estate for us has been an incredibly arduous journey of feast and famine. When we had money, we had a lot of it, but it always seemed to disappear really quick when we bought the next property or something went wrong with another property. As the snowball gets bigger, as it's going down the hill and collecting more snow, it gets more powerful.
Right.
And it gets easier to deal with those financial problems, because now you're not just leaning on a account that is building up $400 a month for repairs. Now you can lean on 10 that are building up $4,000 a month.
Right.
So when you have a repair budget of $4,000 a month, you can easier
spread
tackle.
out.
Yeah.
You spread out the risk, basically.
Right.
The big approach that we've always used in our business was looking at the best case scenario and the worst case scenario. So when we were facing these fears, we sat down and said, okay, what is the worst thing that could happen? What's our plan B?
You know, we dumped half of our 401ks into our first property, and we did the BRRRR strategy, which if you don't know what BRRRR is, it's buy the property, renovate the property, rent the property out, and refinance it to pull out your capital as much as you can, sometimes all. And on that one, we were able to pull out most of it. We had to leave some in it. So we still had a 401k loan that we had to pay off. But if for some reason that property just fell into the ground and no one paid their rent and everything on the house broke all at once and we had no money to fix it, what would we do?
Right. Well, real quick, David Green has a great book called The BRRRR Book. I don't know what it's actually called, but yeah, fantastic book on that strategy. And with that strategy in particular, there's so much risk in the appraisal not coming back where you think it should, and repairs going over, because we know repairs go over on every single project in some level. So we could be in a situation where that refi didn't pull the cash that we needed to pay back that loan.
Right.
And then we would just have to make monthly payments. But for us, the worst case scenario was we might break even cash flow wise on the property.
We may have to end up chunking out money to that property over a period of time until it starts performing.
Right. And that was the worst case on a particular property. For the overall portfolio and strategy and approach, our worst case scenario was that we continued working our jobs. I would go back to my corporate job. You would go back teaching or stay teaching if it was before you had left. Yeah, we would have been out probably tens of thousands of dollars, especially early on. Later on, it was probably more. But
the good thing about life is that it's self-correcting. You go back to what you were doing and you pay off the debt and you can start over.
Right.
Or we were in our late 20s. I was in my late 20s. Tiffany was 25 or so when we first started. And we said, well, if we get to be 30 years old, 32, 33 years old, and it all fails, we can start over. We're young enough that we can start over and rebuild our retirement accounts. And I never once thought, if we fail, there's no way we're doing it again.
Right.
I always had the mindset that if we fail, we're going to probably do it again, just a little wiser this time.
Right. Well, we learned so much along the way. And I think we took a lot of risks that most people, after they have kids, really, but at any age, would not have taken. I think our age, our income level helped a lot. So the risk we took worked for us. And it was worth giving it a shot, because at the end of the day, worst case scenario, maybe I don't pay back the loan on my 401k and it counts as a disbursement against me, which would stink. I mean, worst case scenarios, we file bankruptcy and walk away from everything. And 7 years away.
Yeah, and that's not something that we ever said, this is what our last resort is.
Right.
I don't think we would ever come to the conclusion that we're just going to walk away from it.
Right. But I'm just saying, at the absolute worst case scenario for us, even today, is we just completely file bankruptcy and we start over. And whether that's going back to our jobs or continuing on the real estate investing path,
right,
we would find a way to recoup. And really the goal in this best case, worst case scenario is really focusing first on what's the worst that could happen and go as deep as you can. If we had to file bankruptcy, we lost all of our properties, we lost our personal residence, our cars are paid off so that we would still have our vehicles. But if we couldn't find work, I don't know that we would end up homeless because we would have friends and family nearby that would take us in. But the absolute worst case scenario, I would say, is we wind up moving back in with family and we have to go get just a day job somewhere and hustle to build ourselves back up. But I don't think it would ever come to that because we could find jobs in our professions and make a salary again. And
what was once a fear, because when you start on any path, no matter what you're trying to venture into, for us, it was real estate investing. What you hear from family, friends, and other people in the business that have failed or never got started, what they feed you is a bunch of noise often. And that noise is something that can stimulate your fears. And those fears might be your renters not paying the rent, your renters damaging the property if they have to move out and it wasn't a good situation, something catastrophic happening to your house, like a tornado, losing everything. But I wrote a blog about this, and you can find it on our website, onpurposeinvestor.com. Click on the blogs link. And the blog I wrote about was called It's All White Noise. And I think I even touched on it in a past episode. It's all white noise. It really is. If you allow that fear to fill you up, it will prevent you from ever getting started. But if you take that fear and you turn it into motivation of, I'm going to educate myself so well that this won't happen to me, or I will be so well prepared to deal with it, that you overcome that. But that white noise, like I said in the past episode, you can either turn the TV off, that is not getting started, that is just letting the fear take over you, or you can adjust the antenna and clear it up and enjoy your television. So that's something that I would encourage all of you to do, is take the fear that you have lying in front of you and really dissect it. Try to rationalize, is that fear real? Is it applicable? Is it something that needs to prevent you from doing it? In some cases, that fear is real and it is something that you need to respect and not do whatever it is you're looking at doing. Because there are some investments that bring on certain type of fears that you should listen to that fear and not overcome that fear. Don't go dump $50,000 into cryptocurrency if you know nothing about cryptocurrency. And if you're afraid of losing that $50,000 and you educate yourself on crypto and you come to the conclusion that it's really risky, then that fear was legitimized and you probably didn't make that investment or shouldn't make that investment. But this is the whole process of rationalizing those fears and letting yourself decide, should I listen to the fear and turn it off, or should I adjust the antenna and clear it up and enjoy my TV?
That's why I think fear comes from lack of clarity or unknowns. Because when you educate or partner with someone, you gain enough information that it can take the fear away. Like you were talking about, ignoring fears and just pushing through them. Sometimes that is not the right strategy. I know for us, we kind of go with what's your gut say. And if we're working on a deal and it feels hard and things are just not going smoothly in the purchase process, or there seems like a lot in the inspection that we do, a lot of times we'll just say, you know what, it's not the deal for us.
Well, we said no to a deal last week because of that.
Right.
There was a quadplex or a quadruplex or a 4-unit building. Not sure what you would call it. It looked like a screaming deal. We ran numbers on it. It looked good. But the more we dug into it, the more we had to ask ourselves, does this fit in our portfolio? Does this look like it's going to be easy management or hard management? Does this look like an oh yes or an oh no?
Right.
And Tiffany asked me that. She said, what is your gut saying? I said, well, it's not an oh yes. She said, well, we have an answer. So we backed out of that deal.
Right.
And when we were able to implement that into our lives, yes, we say no to deals sometimes that we could probably make work. We could probably force it to work and make it happen. Your gut, your intuition is something that should be wildly respected.
Yeah.
Because that is what, at your truest core being, is what is making you happy and making you, thrive. So if you're not listening to that intuition and you're forcing things to work, not listening to that internal voice inside of you telling you that you should fear it, then you need to start. You need to start asking yourself, is this an oh yes? Because if it's not, it's an oh no.
Right. Well, and so much of that gut comes from just experience. And if you don't have experience in real estate or whatever venture you're taking on, you can partner with somebody. So you really need to either have education, experience, or money, or some combination of those.
And if you're lacking one of those, you can always search that with a seminar. Go find that in a seminar to get your education, or find someone that's doing it right and find a way to add value to their lives so they can maybe share their value with you. So you can fill those voids by reaching out, going to seminars, finding someone that might be able to mentor you, paying for education, or even, like you said, partnering with someone on a deal. Someone that's very successful, has done this type of deal many a times. You found it, so it's a great deal. It's in your hands. You don't know what to do with it. You're afraid of it, but you also don't want to lose it. So instead of having the whole pie and just giving someone else the entire pie and just walking away because you're afraid of it, open up the pizza box, take a slice for yourself, and give the pie to someone that knows what the heck they're doing. That way you have some of the pie. You at least have learned through that process everything they know, and you've watched it, come to fruition and be successful, and you still own a piece of that pie.
Right. In our business, we have a financial partner who gives us debt. We haven't brought him in as an equity partner yet, but maybe in the future we will. But having him finance our deals, he adds a second pair of eyes. And the deals that he didn't want to finance were the deals we should not have done.
Well, a couple of them, we went to a different financial partner and said, hey, you want to do this deal? And that financial partner is a little more, risky with their decisions, just like we are. Well, just like I am.
Yes.
I am not that risk adverse. I like to take on challenges and say, oh, I can turn this into something. And that financial partner of ours, he's kind of with me on it. It took some convincing early on.
Well, he knows he's going to get paid back.
He trusts
at the
us.
end of the day.
The relationship is more than anything with any of our financial partners.
Right. But at the end of the day, the deals that the other partner would not take on, we probably should not have pursued on some of them.
Some of them.
We have worked on many deals with him that the other partner hadn't reviewed.
Right.
I think most of the deals we've done with that second partner have been where we've gone straight to him first. But the ones that the first partner rejects, we should have run away from.
Well, you get a feeling with your financial partners, your debt partners, because essentially they're only going to loan you money on a house that they would like to own themselves. It's a happy note. They're happy if you pay, they're happy if you don't, because they'll own the property at the end. It's all preferential. Financial partner one might like this 4-sided brick ranch on 3 acres, while financial partner 2 says, no, I only invest in, condominiums, or I only put my money in 4-sided brick ranch on less than a 1/4 acre. It's all preferential.
Right.
Sometimes it's not that it's a bad deal. It's just it doesn't fit in their portfolio vision.
Right.
But yes, I agree.
Yes, thank you.
Should have. This is me fighting back.
Yes.
In a way.
Anyways, so we've talked about the worst case. That's half the exercise.
Mm-hmm.
The other side is the best case scenario. And in our business, when we were first starting, we thought, worst case, we go back to work and continue the life we were living. But the best case scenario is we have time freedom to spend with our kids, to pursue passion projects and hobbies and other things during the workday that we otherwise would not have been able to do. So it created a very clear picture of, okay, the worst case is really the status quo, what we're doing right now. But the best case is this really vivid and rich life where we have time to hang out with our kid. And we went to Chick-fil-A for breakfast this morning, and he ran around the store and acted like a crazy person, and the store was empty, which would probably never happen on a Saturday morning.
Right.
But because it's a Tuesday, we were able to really enjoy a quiet little breakfast together.
And it all kind of goes back to that night around the fire pit at that house that we were living in, where we looked at each other and said, are we really doing this? Is this really what we're about to start doing? And there were so many fears. There was so much unknown lying in front of us. What we did was we challenged those fears with education. We pursued our passion by overcoming those fears. Some of them were very legitimate fears too.
Yeah, well, and so much of it was, Mitch Steven calls it La Calle U. It's the streets university. We learned a lot on
the streets.
Yes. I mean, you think back to our first deal and how we renovated it, and
there were a lot of things we did on that first deal that I would never do now.
Right. But you learned, and the lesson was worth the cost of admission. All of this is really a goal of reframing your fears in a way that make them more manageable. So by really thinking about what is the fear, I think a lot of times fears innately are related to back in the caveman days being chased by a lion. And today we have these same hormonal reactions to fear that aren't life or death. But we are built in a way that we respond in a life or death way. So, yes, providing for our family is important.
And protection.
Right. Shelter, all of the things we enjoy. But at the end of the day, taking this risk of investing in one property is not a life or death situation. And that's where I think if you break it down into like, what is really the worst case scenario if I do this?
And what was the best? If you failed, sure, you go back to what you were doing, pay off any debts that you may have incurred, and drive on with your life.
Right.
And don't try it again, or try it again later when you're more financially prepared or you're wiser. But what we were talking about is the best case that could come from it all. So, and like Tiffany said, in our best case situation, we achieve everything we wanted and more. We're still waiting on the and more part of it, but we have achieved a lot of our goals. We wanted to be able to stay at home with our son. We're doing that.
Right.
We wanted to be able to pursue passion projects. We're doing that. We wanted to travel. We're doing that. Our best case scenario is befolding before our eyes.
Right.
We leave tomorrow on a camping trip. We call it camping, but it's more glamping. We're going on an RV trip down to Tybee Island to show out of the beach, maybe see some friends down in Savannah, and just get away. We've been plugging away for a pretty good long time now on launching the website, launching the podcast. And we both said we got to be very intentional about traveling once a month, getting out, seeing things, and just separating ourselves from our hustle of these projects that we're doing.
Right.
And
so we're taking almost a full week every month to travel. And
that was part of our best case scenario. Can we do it? Can we leave on a Tuesday and come back on a Saturday?
Right.
Well, without the chains of a W-2, we can't.
Right. And that was our best case scenario. And it made taking the risk and viewing that worst case scenario worth it. I think doing this best case, worst case scenario exercise really just reframes in your mind the risk and the reward of taking some action, whatever that action may be. An exercise our friend Bill Cook uses when he's trying to buy houses is called a T-bar. And what he does is he writes down the current state for that homeowner on the left side, and then on the right of the bar, he writes down what the future state could be. So if, for example, they have a monthly payment they can't afford, he would write a monthly payment over your current available funds. And the future state is you can be in a home situation where you're not overextending yourself. So it's, in essence, doing a best case, worst case scenario for a homeowner. And I think it's a really good exercise for us to do with that fear. So just writing down what's your current state. So what are your current fears? And then what is the best case scenario of that fear? So if you're looking to buy a property and you're scared the tenants are going to call you at 2 a.m. and you're not going to have enough money for the repairs and things like that, you write that down on the left side. And then on the right side, you write what it could also be. That you hire a property manager so you don't ever hear from your tenants, or you have the repairs are covered through a higher appraisal, or just really looking at the best case and worst case and really writing it out.
What I think you also need to do to factor in, how do you remedy some of those fears? Well, you can remedy some of those with education, and you can remedy some of those with reaching out to people that are successful landlords or that are successful creative deal structurers. There are ways to overcome fears by becoming aware of the outcome before it's there. So what are some things that we did to overcome our fears? Well, first we had to adapt the concept that we're about to have to get very comfortable being very uncomfortable. Because being afraid of something and facing that fear is not very comfy. If you're afraid of spiders and you have to go somewhere where there are spiders, you're not going to be that comfortable. But let's say your target destination is on the other side of this pit of spiders, and that destination is about to be every dream come true for your life. You're probably going to face that fear and get to the other side. It's kind of like watching Fear Factor, lay in this tub of cockroaches
and then eat them.
And then eat them or whatever. But at the end was a reward of some type of money that might change their life.
Right. Yeah, there's a really good quote by Nelson Mandela. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers the fear. And I think it's so accurate of that getting comfortable being uncomfortable. We still have fears. Even when we buy houses now, there's still fear in that, but we've gotten so used to it. We've conquered that fear, and we're used to that uncomfortable feeling of, oh crap, I don't know how we're going to make this payment.
I don't know if it's fear, Tiffany. I think it might be more acknowledging the risk and being less risk adverse. While it might be fear on your end, it's not fear for me in the sense of I'm afraid that we're not going to find a tenant in time to start paying the note, or I'm afraid that this renovation is going to take too long. I see it in the sense of what have we been successful with in the past? What have we overcome so far? And is this risk comparable to those? Is it bigger risk? Is it less risk? If it's a bigger risk, yeah, it does motivate some fear. But if it's a less risk or an even risk, then I see it as we have the tools to conquer this and we can get through it.
Yeah, I think we definitely have conquered a lot of the fears. I still have, I think my big fear in the business right now is when things with a tenant turn nasty and you just wonder, are they going to pay? Are they going to just trash the house? Are they pouring concrete down the toilets? That kind of thing. That's what keeps me up at night.
And those are rational fears. We built this business in a way that it can sustain itself.
Right.
It can repair itself.
Yes.
And we don't have to detract from our personal life to overcome those things.
Right.
So while, yes, it's very natural to feel those fears of those things happening, but at a certain point, you have to, accept that is the cost of doing business sometimes.
Right, for sure. Yeah, definitely. But I think we are finding ways to overcome the fear because the best case scenario is what we're living.
That's
and
right.
Yes, we could lose it all. Who knows if another '08 crash is coming or what the situation may be. But we have the education and the tools now through experience that we could rebuild if we had to.
Oh, we'd build back even stronger.
Yeah.
We'd find a way to make it bigger and better than before.
Right. And I think the reason we would is our why is so big. We want to travel and spend time with family and all the things that we have said many times on the podcast. And because that why is big enough and we've dreamed really big, the status quo life that most people live is not for us anymore. I don't think we'd be content watching TV at night if we knew we weren't going to be able to have time with our kids the next day.
Yeah.
We would hustle and find a way to make it work. And it's because that why is just so big.
Yeah, once you get a taste of it, you never want to eat anything else.
Yeah. Like the steak we had for dinner last night.
It was pretty tasty.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I could eat steak all the time. Don't want to eat anything else.
Overcoming these fears, how did we overcome them? Well, it was motivated by the why, and that why drove our determination to say there is no outcome other than success. We will not accept failure as an option. And sure, that's a little silly to say failure is not an option when it's always an option. Failure can always happen. But are you going to allow failure to happen easily? And that's something we were determined not to do.
And we didn't want the failure to define our future.
Right.
I mean, we failed on a lot of properties. And
yeah, we have failed here and there. Renovations going too long. Renovations costing too much.
Appraisals not coming in.
Appraisals not coming in, or even leasing out the property to a tenant that we should have never leased.
We get into a property and didn't have a septic check done and find out we have to put in new fill lines. And that was a fun several $1,000 expense that we weren't expecting. Yeah. But we learn from it, and we don't let it define what we're going to do we let it define what we're doing going forward, in the sense that we will learn from it. But it's not, that one failure is not going to hold us back from doing another deal.
Right. Because I was a failure today does not mean I'm going to be a failure tomorrow. because the decisions we made caused us to fail in this season does not mean my next season is also going to be a failure.
Right. I mean, our first deal took us about 6 months that we were under contract, and we were ready to roll and do this deal. And there was some probate issues where someone didn't probate the will from a deceased family, several people back in the family line. And we wound up walking away from the deal because we found out it was zoned commercial. At this point, it would be an awesome deal. We would take it on in a heartbeat and it'd be really excited. But if we had taken that deal on as our first deal, I don't know how far we would have gone, because the repairs that it needed were way outside of what we were ready to handle. Right. The scope in general of that project was a lot.
But we didn't do the deal because something came up that triggered us to be even more fearful of it. That was a rational fear.
Right. Well, and that rational fear was triggering, hey, this might not be the right deal for you. Mm-hmm. We firmly believe that was God's hand on us, driving us away from that property.
Absolutely.
And if it came up for sale tomorrow, I'd go buy it in a heartbeat. But
right. Probably for $150,000 more now.
Well, yeah. But the lessons learned on that were worth it. And
that's right.
And it taught us to trust our gut.
Yeah, and it also taught us to have a team. The person that actually pointed that out wasn't an insurance agent, and it wasn't our real estate agent. It was our mortgage broker.
Right.
It was the broker that we had lined up to finance the property that said, hey, I need a letter for insurance, and we couldn't get that letter.
To be clear, the agent on this was not our agent that we've used over the several years.
We hadn't found our special BK at that point.
Yeah, so for those of you that know us personally, it was not our regular agent. So
right.
It was not his fault. It was somebody else.
Before we found
your Boo Bear.
That's right.
All right.
Hopefully you've enjoyed listening to us talk about, overcoming fear and how we overcame fear to reach and live a life that we consider to be so rich.
Right. Yeah. I mean, reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, email, whatever's easiest for you. We'd love to get your feedback and hear how you can use this to overcome your fears. Thanks, y'all, for hanging out with us and listening to us talk about overcoming the fear of investing. How can you make the time you spent with us worthwhile? Is it writing down your fears and digging into why you're scared through a T-bar? Analyzing the worst case scenario compared to the best case? Or something else? Don't let the time you just invested go to waste. You only get one life, so live it purposefully. That's all we have for you today. See you next time.
Are you ready to discover and build your dream life? Then it's time to become a Pathfinder. Head over to onpurposeinvestor.com and sign up for our newsletter to get tips and tricks to help you find your path and get the latest from our blog. If you haven't already, we'd really appreciate an honest review on your favorite podcast app. If you're enjoying this show, share it with friends, family, and fellow investors. See you next time at the On Purpose Investor Podcast.